When my son opened the gift from his grandmother and found an empty box, something inside me snapped, but not in the way you might think. My name's Hector. I'm 36, a single dad to the most thoughtful, sensitive little boy you'll ever meet, Elijah. He just turned 7, and even at that age, he understands things most adults can't. Maybe it's because he's had to. I work in IT support, nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps us comfortable. It's just us two, and I've done everything I can to make sure he never feels the absence of anyone who walked out on us, including his mom. She dipped when Elijah was 2 and hasn't been back since. That's a different story, though. This one's about someone who was supposed to stay, someone who smiled through her betrayal like it was an act of love. My mom, Gloria, has always been complicated. I used to call it quirky when I was younger, even charming in a way. She'd play favorites like it was a game, making jokes like, well, you know your brother was always my little prince, or your sister's boys are just more high energy than Elijah. He's so quiet, as if being gentle was a flaw. I brushed it off for years. I made excuses, told myself she was getting older, that maybe she didn't realize what she was doing. But looking back, I think I knew. I just didn't want to admit that my own mother could be cruel in such a quiet, cutting way. She has 3 grandkids. Elijah, my son. Then there's Jamie and Caleb, my sister Marlene's 2 boys, 8 and 10. They're a handful, always have been. Marlene's a single mom too, and we used to be close, until money started changing things. Or maybe it just revealed what was always there. I don't know. Ever since our dad passed away and left a modest inheritance, things have been off. Mom took it upon herself to manage the funds, despite us all being adults. She'd say things like, it's just better this way. I know who really needs it. And surprise, surprise, who really needed it was always Marlene. Always her boys. It all came to a head 2 weeks ago at what was supposed to be a simple family gathering. Elijah had made a little card for Grandma, hand-drawn with colored pencils, a smiley sun in the corner, his shaky block letters spelling out, I love you, Grandma. He was so proud of it. He tucked it into the gift bag she handed him without even looking inside first. He trusted her. That's what kills me. He looked up at her with those wide eyes, expecting something. Not much. He's not greedy. A small toy. A book. Maybe even socks. Anything to show she thought of him. Instead, he reached in and pulled out an empty cardboard box, the kind that maybe once held jewelry or a gift card. There was nothing in it. Not a note. Not a sticker. Not even a piece of tissue paper to soften the blow. He stared at it for a second. Then he looked at her. Grandma, he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. I think something's missing. That's when she laughed. Not mean exactly, but dismissive. Like this was all some joke we were all in on. Oh, honey, she said, smiling like she was sharing some deep wisdom. I gave the real presents to Jamie and Caleb. They needed them more. You understand, don't you? You already have everything. Elijah blinked. But I made you a card. I saw it, she said, already turning away to where Marlene and the boys were tearing into their brightly wrapped packages. Remote-controlled cars, expensive Lego sets, matching winter jackets that probably cost more than I spend on rent. It's very sweet. You're such a sweet boy. He didn't say anything else. Just sat there, that empty box still in his lap, while the room buzzed around him like nothing happened. Like that was normal. Like it was okay to teach a child he was less important because he didn't need things as much as someone else. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just walked over, took Elijah's hand, and said, let's go, bud. He looked up at me like he was trying to be brave, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. The hurt. I strapped him into the car seat and climbed into the driver's side, gripping the wheel a little too tight. He looked so small in the rearview mirror. Dad? He said softly, almost a whisper. Yeah. Did I do something wrong? That was the moment. That was the exact second I knew things had to change. I turned around and looked him in the eye. No, Elijah. You did everything right. And I promise you, you'll never be made to feel second again. Not by her. Not by anyone. He nodded, then leaned his head against the window and didn't say anything else the whole ride home. I don't know if he believed me, but I meant every word. 2 weeks later, she called. I saw her name flash across the screen, Mom. I let it ring out. She tried again, then again. On the 4th call, I picked up. Her voice was softer than usual, almost unsure. Hector, she said. I hate to ask, but I need a little help. It's my prescription, my blood pressure medication. They upped the cost, and well, I let her talk. Let her explain the situation in detail. How Marlene was short on cash. How the boys were sick. How she was stressed. Then she said, I know you've always been responsible. I could really use a hand this time. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just said, ask the grandkids you invested in. My son and I won't be part of this anymore. Then I hung up. That was the start. I thought it would end there, but it didn't. Not even close. Because what I didn't know then was that my mom wasn't just playing favorites. She was playing a long game. One that involved money, manipulation, and more lies than I was prepared for. And soon, the fallout would hit harder than I expected. The calls didn't stop after that first one. My mom tried texting me too, always the same carefully worded messages. I'm sorry if you were upset the other day, or can we talk? I think you misunderstood, or Elijah is such a special boy, you know I love him. But there was never an actual apology. Never anything resembling accountability. Just vague platitudes meant to smooth things over without addressing the core issue, that she didn't treat my son like family. Not really. And maybe she never had. The worst part was how normal she acted in the days after. As if what happened wasn't a big deal. As if a 7-year-old forgetting about it was the same thing as forgiveness. But Elijah didn't forget. Kids don't. They just carry it differently. He didn't bring it up again, but he didn't draw her any more pictures. He stopped asking when we were going to Grandma's. Stopped pointing out her favorite flowers when we walked past them on the street. He quietly, wordlessly, withdrew. And I watched it happen knowing I couldn't fix it with a Band-Aid and a hug. It was around this time that Marlene started ramping up the social media posts. Pictures of her boys at the trampoline park, with new scooters, tablets, matching outfits. Captions like, thanks to Grandma for spoiling them, or can't believe how lucky we are to have her. It felt intentional. I didn't comment. Didn't say anything. But I won't lie, it stung. Not because of the gifts, but because I knew my mom was seeing those comments and smiling. Meanwhile, Elijah was sitting on the floor with a box of crayons, and no one praising him for being easy to love. I would have kept my distance. I really would have. But then came the birthday party. Elijah's 8th birthday was coming up in February, and I was planning something low-key. Just a few friends from school, cake, balloons, maybe a magician if I could find one cheap enough. Nothing extravagant. We weren't that kind of family. But we were happy. I mentioned the plan to my mom during one of her more persistent calls, thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd want to come and show up for him this time. Maybe even redeem herself a little. Oh, she said, her voice already heavy with something I couldn't place. Actually, I already committed to something that weekend. Marlene's boys are having a joint party. You know how hard it is to schedule things around everyone's activities. I didn't think Elijah would be doing anything. I blinked. You didn't think I'd throw a party for my son? Well, you're always so practical, Hector. You don't make a fuss about birthdays. Not like Marlene. She puts so much effort in, and the boys really look forward to it. Elijah looks forward to his birthday too. There was a pause. Then, too quickly, of course. Of course he does. I didn't mean anything by it. I didn't say anything. I just let the silence hang there until she finally said, maybe I can swing by after? Drop off a little something. Don't bother, I said, and hung up. She didn't come. The day of Elijah's birthday, he had his friends over. We decorated the apartment with streamers and little blue and yellow paper fans. I made a cake from scratch, chocolate with whipped cream frosting, just how he liked it. He got a few presents, nothing over the top, but thoughtful. A puzzle from his teacher, a space book from one of the moms, and a soft blue hoodie from me, with a little spaceship patch sewn near the zipper. He smiled the whole time, but I saw the way he glanced toward the door every so often. Waiting. She never came. No call. No card. Not even a text. That night, after everyone left and I was cleaning up the frosting smeared on the table, Elijah sat at the kitchen counter swinging his legs. Do you think Grandma forgot? He asked. No, I said gently. I think she just made a choice. He didn't reply, but I could see his lips pressed together and his eyes flicked down to the floor. And I knew. Right then, I had reached my breaking point. There was no coming back from this. The empty gift had been a warning shot. The birthday was the kill shot. She didn't forget. She prioritized. She always did. But it still wasn't over. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my sister. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hey, she said, a little breathless. Just a heads up, Mom's in a bit of a bind. She might reach out again. What kind of bind? She had this thing with the pharmacy. Some insurance mix-up or whatever. She's short, like $600 for her meds. Didn't she say the boys were sick? I asked. Yeah, Caleb had strep last week. What? Because she said the same thing when she asked me for money. Marlene laughed awkwardly. Well, I guess we all stretch the truth sometimes. Is that what we're calling it now? Silence. Then she said, Look, I know things got weird at Christmas, but Mom's just trying her best, okay? You're being a little dramatic. And that was the moment I realized something crucial. It wasn't just my mom. Marlene had been part of it all along. Maybe not actively, but she benefited from the favoritism. She accepted the gifts, the praise, the blind loyalty, and she never once asked why Elijah got left behind. She didn't question it because it worked in her favor. You know what, Marlene? I said, trying hard to keep my voice calm. I don't want to be part of this anymore. You and Mom can keep your little circle. I'm out. Don't be ridiculous, she scoffed. She's your mother. No, she's Elijah's grandmother. And she's failing at that job. I hung up. And then came the betrayal that made everything before it feel like child's play. I got a letter in the mail. Not an email. A letter, official looking, with my mom's handwriting scribbled on the back in cursive. At first, I thought it was something about her prescriptions. Maybe a bill she was trying to forward to guilt me into paying. But when I opened it, I froze. It was a copy of a legal document. Something called a revocable transfer on death deed. Apparently, sometime in the past year, my mother had added Marlene's name to the deed of her house. Not just as a beneficiary, but as a joint owner with full survivorship rights. Meaning, when my mom died, the house would automatically become Marlene's. No probate. No will. No discussion. I sat down at the kitchen table and just stared at the paper. There was a sticky note attached. It read, in her soft, loopy handwriting. I know this might sting, but Marlene's always been the most stable one. She can manage things when I'm gone. I hope you understand. Understand? That was when the rage hit. Not just anger, but betrayal. Deep, molten, nauseating betrayal. I hadn't expected anything from her estate. Truly. But to be deliberately excluded, not just financially, but symbolically, after everything I had done, after raising my son alone, after being the one she always called when the car broke down or the doctor needed to be driven to. It felt like a slap in the face with a smile attached. This wasn't about money. It was about erasure. It was about being written out of her life before she was even gone. And suddenly, everything else started clicking into place. The missing birthday invite. The surprise exclusion from family group photos Marlene would post. The fact that Mom had stopped asking about Elijah's school plays, his art projects, the things she used to pretend to care about. She had already cut us out. The paper was just the final confirmation. I didn't cry. Not then. I couldn't. I felt hollow. Like someone had carved out the part of me that still hoped, foolishly, that things could go back to how they used to be when I was a kid and Mom packed my lunch with those little napkin notes. Elijah found me sitting at the table and climbed into the chair next to mine. He saw the paper, but didn't ask what it was. Instead, he said, "Can we have waffles for dinner?" I nodded. "Yeah, bud. We can have waffles." And as I got up to pull out the mix, I knew something inside me had changed forever. This wasn't just about my mom anymore. This was about protecting my son from a legacy of hurt. And whether she liked it or not, I wasn't done yet. Because if she wanted to cut us out, I was going to show her just how clean that cut could be. But first, I needed a plan. And that's when everything started falling into place. I wish I could say I sprang into action the moment I read that deed. Like I flipped some emotional switch and immediately started plotting my comeback. But the truth is, I spiraled a little first. That week was a blur of work emails I barely answered, meals I forgot to eat, and nights I spent staring at the ceiling with a knot in my chest that wouldn't go away. There's something uniquely gutting about realizing that someone who's supposed to love you unconditionally decided, quietly, gradually, that you weren't worth the effort. And worse, that she didn't think your child was either. For days, I went through the motions, packed Elijah's lunch, walked him to school, smiled when I had to. But inside, I felt numb. Like I was watching my life from the outside, just going through the script. Every time I looked at Elijah, I felt this pang of guilt. He didn't deserve any of this. He was just a kid. A good one. And I'd let people make him feel invisible. One night, a few days after the letter arrived, I caught him trying to tape his birthday card back together. The one he'd made for Grandma. It had been tossed on the side table since the party, a crease down the middle where it had been folded and unfolded too many times. He sat at the coffee table, tongue peeking out in concentration, pressing Scotch tape along the edge like he was trying to fix something precious. "Hey," I said, kneeling down. "What are you doing with that?" He looked up. "I just thought, maybe if I fixed it, she'd want it." My heart cracked in half. I sat down next to him, pulled the card gently from his hands, and set it aside. "You don't need to fix anything, okay? This," I tapped his chest, "is already enough." He nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but sensing it mattered. Then he leaned into me, small and warm and trusting. I wrapped my arms around him and made a decision right then. We weren't waiting for anyone to show up for us anymore. We were going to build something better. Just us. The next morning, I called HR at work and asked about remote opportunities. I'd been doing the same mid-level IT support role for almost 5 years, steady, but stagnant. I'd always told myself I'd look into promotions or side gigs once things settled down. But now I saw that settled down was just another excuse to stay small, to stay safe. My manager, Laura, surprised me. She told me about a new internal program, something about digital infrastructure migration, that paid more and offered flexible hours. It would mean extra certification, but she said, "Hector, I've seen your work. If you want this, you've got it." I wanted it. So at night, after Elijah went to sleep, I studied, took online courses, practiced mock scenarios, joined forums, asked dumb questions, and got smarter one thread at a time. It was exhausting, but it was the good kind. The kind where you fall asleep knowing you moved the needle. At the same time, I started showing up differently for Elijah too. More engaged, more present. Not that I hadn't been before, but now it was intentional. I signed him up for a Saturday science club at the local library, volunteered to chaperone his field trip. We started a little tradition where every Friday night was adventure night. Just the two of us, trying something new. Sometimes it was a movie with weird snacks. Other times, it was driving out to the park after dark and lying on a blanket to count stars. He loved it. I did too. Meanwhile, my mom kept reaching out. She called on Sundays, texted me pictures of the boys with captions like, "Look how big Caleb's getting," or "Jamie won his soccer game." It was like she was trying to bait me into conversation without ever acknowledging what she'd done. The deed. The birthday. The box. I didn't respond. She finally left a voicemail one evening while I was making dinner. "Hector, this is getting ridiculous. I've always tried to be fair. Maybe it doesn't look that way to you, but I've done what I could. You've always been the strong one. Marlene needed more help. That's not favoritism, it's reality. Don't punish me for trying to keep everyone afloat." I deleted it without listening to the rest. That week, I passed my certification exam. Top 5% in the program. My manager called to offer me the new role, hybrid schedule, better pay, project lead. I accepted before she could finish the sentence. The raise wasn't life-changing, but it was enough to breathe a little. I upgraded Elijah's room, got him a proper desk, a bookshelf for all his space books, and glow-in-the-dark stars for the ceiling. I also splurged on a second-hand telescope. He was ecstatic. We stayed up late that night looking at the moon. He pointed to a crater and said, "That's where I'm going to build my house." I smiled. "I'll come visit you, okay? Just don't forget to call your old man from the moon." He giggled, but then his face turned serious. "Do you think Grandma would want to come to the moon too?" I paused, choosing my words. "I think Grandma made her choice, buddy. But that doesn't mean you have to carry it. You can still go to the moon. You can still dream big." He nodded. "I'm going to build you a space chair." A few weeks later, I got an email from my aunt, my mom's older sister, Lorraine. She lived a few towns over, and we didn't talk much, but we'd always gotten along. "Hector," the email read, "I'm not sure what's going on with you and your mother, but I thought you should know. She's been telling people you're withholding Elijah from her as punishment, that you've cut her off financially and won't even let her see her grandson. I know there's more to it than that. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." That was the moment I realized my mother wasn't just avoiding accountability. She was rewriting the narrative, playing the victim, painting me as some cold, vindictive son who was keeping a child away out of spite. And the thing was, people believed her. Family friends stopped liking my photos on social media. Old cousins stopped replying to my messages. One even sent a snide DM. "Heard you're too good for family now." It was like she was poisoning the well behind my back, while still sending me smiley face emojis in her texts. That's when the grief hit. Not just for the mom I wished I had, but for the illusion I'd been clinging to. That someday, somehow, she'd wake up and realize she'd been wrong. That she'd come to Elijah's school play with a bouquet of flowers and tears in her eyes, saying, "I'm sorry I missed so much." But she wouldn't. She didn't think she was wrong. She never would. So I grieved. I let myself feel the loss, not just of a parent, but of a relationship I'd spent my whole life trying to earn. And once I accepted that, something shifted. I felt lighter, freer. I stopped worrying about who believed her. I stopped explaining myself to people who didn't ask for the full story. I focused on what I could control: my home, my son, my peace. And slowly, quietly, things got better. I started journaling at night, signed up for a local co-op where Elijah and I learned how to grow our own herbs. I joined a dad's group, just a few guys who met once a month for wings and board games. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it reminded me that I wasn't alone. One of the dads, Theo, ran a side business doing small network installations for local offices and clinics. He liked my vibe and asked if I wanted in on some freelance work. I said yes. By the end of the month, I had 3 side clients and a second stream of income. I finally opened a college savings account for Elijah. Nothing massive, but a start. Life didn't explode into sunshine and rainbows. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something real, something lasting. Not for their approval, but for us. And then, just when things were starting to feel stable again, I got a call. Blocked number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. It was my mom. Not crying, not apologizing, but desperate. Her voice was shaky, brittle. "Hector, I didn't know who else to call. It's about the house. I need to talk to you. Please." I didn't say anything. Because what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that I had already learned about the liens, the unpaid taxes, the refinance she'd tried to hide, and how Marlene had backed out of helping her with the payments once she realized the house came with more debt than equity. She thought she cut me out. She didn't realize she'd handed me the knife. I took a deep breath and said, "Go ahead. I'm listening." When I hung up the phone, I sat in silence for a long time. Elijah was at a friend's house for a sleepover, and the apartment was unusually quiet. All I could hear was the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the heating pipes. My mom's voice still echoed in my ears, every word dripping with carefully disguised panic. She didn't come out and say she was desperate, but I knew. I heard it in the hesitation between her sentences, the way she cleared her throat like she was trying not to cry, the way she said my name 3 times in one call, like she was trying to summon the version of me she used to manipulate. The one who would drop everything, drive over, and fix it all. The one who used to believe that helping meant love. That version of me was gone. And now, for the first time, I wasn't just reacting to her messes. I was thinking several moves ahead. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder I'd quietly started weeks ago. I called it Just in Case, but it was really a record of every financial detail I'd gathered once I found out about the house deed. I hadn't intended to use it, not at first. I just didn't want to be blindsided again. But now it felt like something more. Like a chessboard she didn't even know she was standing on. I'd already done the legwork. I had screenshots of the county's property tax site showing the delinquent payments, PDF copies of the lien documents from a quick public records search. And thanks to a casual lunch with Theo, whose wife just so happened to be a paralegal, I'd even gotten a breakdown of what would happen if my mom defaulted. Spoiler, it wasn't good. The house wasn't underwater, but it was treading, barely. She'd refinanced twice in the past decade and taken out a home equity loan during the pandemic. Most of the money had gone to help Marlene. School tuition, camp fees, a minivan. Meanwhile, the property taxes had quietly piled up like unpaid IOUs. She owed nearly $18,000. Another missed payment, and the county could initiate foreclosure proceedings. And now she was calling me. I leaned back in my chair and let that sink in. She'd cut me out of her life, out of her will, out of the stories she told other people. But when the walls started closing in, who did she call? The son she didn't invest in. The grandson she gave an empty box. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, thinking, if I helped her, bailed her out, like I'd done in small ways for years, what would change? Nothing. She'd recover, twist the story, and we'd be right back where we started. But if I let the cracks spread a little longer, there might be a way to do more than just walk away. I could take control of the narrative. I could take control of the house. And I knew exactly how to do it. The next morning, I made a few calls. Not to my mom, not to Marlene, but to people who actually mattered. First, I called Theo and asked if we could grab coffee, just the two of us. We met at this quiet little place near his office, all reclaimed wood and Edison bulbs. He raised an eyebrow when he saw the manila folder I brought with me. All right, he said, sliding into the booth. You look like a guy with a plan. I nodded and opened the folder. I need your help. Or more specifically, I need your wife's expertise. He glanced through the documents, property tax bills, lien notices, and the deed transfer. His eyes widened. Dang, Hector, this is serious. Yeah, I said, leaning forward. But here's the thing. If the house goes into foreclosure, the bank wins. My mom loses everything, and Marlene walks away with clean hands. And you want what exactly? I want to buy the debt. He blinked. You want to pay off the lien? No. I want to negotiate with the lien holder, buy the debt outright, and secure a private agreement that gives me first right of refusal if the house is sold. Basically, I want control of the asset, without making it look like revenge. Theo let out a low whistle. That's cold. No, I said, meeting his eyes. It's clean. He nodded slowly. All right, I'll talk to Jenna. She'll know what you need. I left that meeting with a clear head and a renewed sense of purpose. The next few days were a blur of logistics, emails, phone calls, paperwork, follow-ups. I learned more about municipal liens than I ever thought possible. Jenna walked me through everything. How the city sells tax liens to third-party investors, how those investors then profit from interest or foreclosure, and how in certain cases, someone like me could negotiate to purchase that lien directly. The numbers weren't small. I'd need about $22,000 to cover the total owed, including penalties. It wasn't money I had lying around, but I had credit. I had savings. I had freelance income. I even had the option of liquidating a few stocks from the old investment account my dad started for me before he passed. I'd been saving that for Elijah's future. But now I realized this was for Elijah's future too. Still, I hesitated. Not because I wasn't ready to do it, but because I needed one more piece to fall into place before I could move forward. So I called my aunt. Lorraine answered on the second ring. Hector. Hey, I said, keeping my voice even. You said you wanted the truth. Do you have 20 minutes? She did, and I gave it to her. All of it. The empty gift. The birthday. The deed. The debt. The phone call. Everything my mother had done, not just to me, but to Elijah, and to her own future. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then Lorraine sighed. You know, I always suspected. Your mom was different after your dad passed. I think she panicked. Clung to whoever made her feel needed. Marlene. She used to be more balanced. But lately, she's been sharp. Judgmental. And when I asked her about you, she said you'd cut her off financially. Like you were punishing her. I'm not punishing her, I said. I'm protecting my kid. I believe you, she said quietly. And I want to help. She didn't have money to offer, but she did have something else. Access. She still talked to Marlene. She still got invited to the family group chats. She still knew when mom had appointments, when she'd be home, when she'd be distracted. And she was willing to share. I didn't want sabotage. I wanted opportunity. And Lorraine gave me just that. She told me that mom was scheduled to meet with a financial advisor the following week. One she'd been hoping would find a way to save the house without involving me. But if I moved fast and quietly, I could beat her to the punch. So I did. With Jenna's help, I finalized the paperwork. I contacted the lien holder, made an offer, negotiated terms, and wired the funds. It took most of my reserves, but by the end of the week, I was the legal holder of my mother's debt. I owned the rights to the unpaid taxes on her house. It wasn't the house itself. Not yet. But it was the key. And now I had it. The morning after everything went through, I got a message from Lorraine. She thinks she has a solution. Marlene told her to ask you again. Said she was too busy to help now. Thought you should know. I didn't reply, because I knew the call was coming. She called on a Thursday, right on schedule, just like Lorraine said she would. I let it ring until the very last second before answering. Hector, she said, breathless, like she'd just run a mile to get to the phone. I've been thinking about our last conversation, and I think maybe we both said things we didn't mean. I didn't respond. I let the silence stretch. I'm meeting with someone next week, she continued. A financial advisor. Marlene gave me the contact, but I wanted to give you the chance first. I didn't want you to feel left out. I almost laughed. Left out. That was rich coming from a woman who'd made my son feel invisible on his own birthday. I'm listening, I said instead. She launched into it like a rehearsed monologue. The taxes, the penalties, the threat of foreclosure, the stress, the mistakes she may have made, and how maybe we could come to an agreement. Just temporarily, of course, until she got back on her feet. She used the word family 5 times in under a minute. It was almost impressive. When she finally ran out of steam, I took a breath. I already handled the lien, I said. Silence. What? She said sharply. I bought the debt. Last week. It's mine now. The line went dead quiet. I could picture her sitting at her kitchen table, face draining of color, hand probably trembling as she gripped the phone. What do you mean you bought it? I mean the house doesn't owe money to the city anymore. It owes it to me. I own the tax lien, which means if it's not paid back, I can initiate foreclosure proceedings. Her voice hardened. You wouldn't do that. I didn't say anything. You wouldn't do that to your own mother, she repeated, louder this time, like volume would change the truth. I leaned back in my chair, calm as I'd ever been. You already did worse to your own grandson. She was stunned. I heard her inhale sharply, but she didn't have a comeback. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to sign the house over to me. I'll take over the mortgage and taxes. You can stay in it, rent-free, for 1 year. After that, we'll evaluate. But legally, the property will be mine. You can't be serious. I am. And if you don't agree, I'll move forward with foreclosure. It'll go public. There'll be notices on the door. Your neighbors will talk. And Marlene? She's already out. She's not coming to save you. She used you up, and now she's done. She's my daughter. And I'm your son. I snapped, finally letting a bit of the heat show. But that never seemed to matter much, did it? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I'll give you a few days to think about it, I said, my voice returning to calm. You'll get the paperwork by the end of the week. And then I hung up. The fallout came fast. 3 days later, I got a text from Marlene. All caps. What did you do to MOM? I didn't respond. She called next. Left a voicemail accusing me of being a backstabbing snake and stealing our family home. She said I was manipulating Mom in her vulnerable state, that I was traumatizing everyone, that she'd call the police, a lawyer, the Pope, probably. Then came the email from my mom. It was different. Not angry, not defensive, just 5 words. I signed the transfer papers. That afternoon, Lorraine confirmed it. Mom had gone to the notary with the documents. Everything was in motion. The deed would be mine within the week. I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. I felt clean, like I'd finally taken back something that had been quietly stolen from me years ago. And from Elijah. A month passed. We didn't visit her. I didn't call. I had the locks changed and gave her new keys. I set the terms clearly in writing. 1 year rent-free, utilities covered, with quarterly reviews. If she tried to sell, refinance, or change anything about the property, the deal would be void. She didn't thank me, but she didn't argue either. I'd won, and she knew it. As for Marlene, she disappeared from the family group chats. Word got around, though not from me, that she'd been dodging Mom's calls ever since the debt surfaced. Apparently, she'd moved on. New boyfriend. New city. No time for the woman she once swore she'd always take care of. Typical. Elijah, blissfully unaware of most of the drama, continued to thrive. We took our first vacation, just the 2 of us, to a little cabin near the lake. He caught his first fish. I let him stay up late to roast marshmallows and tell ghost stories. One night, as we lay under the stars, he said, I like it better when it's just us. I smiled. Me too, buddy. I never told him the full story. Maybe one day I will, when he's older, when he's ready. But for now, it's enough that he feels safe. Chosen. Loved. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. From my mom. It was short. Meandering. She didn't apologize, not really. Just a vague. I wish things had gone differently. She asked about Elijah. Said she missed his smile. Said she hoped we'd visit sometime soon. I didn't reply. Some silences are answers. 6 months passed. I officially became the owner of the house. The taxes were paid. The liens cleared. The title transferred. I considered selling it, honestly. But instead, I held on to it. Leased it back to Mom under a formal agreement. This time with rent. No more favors. No more loopholes. When the lease ended after that first year, she moved into a small senior apartment across town. No ceremony, no goodbye. She left the key on the counter. I changed the locks again and had the place deep cleaned. And then I did something I'd been dreaming about since the day Elijah opened that empty box. I turned the house into a transitional home for single dads and their kids. With help from Theo and a few contacts at the co-op, we started a program: short-term housing, job placement assistance, parenting workshops. I called it Elijah's house. The first family moved in just before Christmas. And when Elijah helped me hang the welcome sign by the front door, he beamed up at me and said, "Is this really ours?" I ruffled his hair. "It is now. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't taking something back. It's building something better in its place." And that's exactly what we did.